Okay, good.
Now we're good.
We are Facebook Live, so it is Wednesday, 2 o'clock. So same thing we do every Wednesday. Welcome to the question and answer time. Last week we talked a good bit about liquid termiticide versus bait stations that are becoming more and more popular. I didn't fully finish explaining the difference there. The question was, what was better? Which one is better and which one isn't? Before I jump into that, I just want to make sure we don't have any whatever announcements or anything like that we got.
No, the only thing was, Lucas had his 5th year anniversary day.
That's right.
We already posted about that this morning, so that's a big thing. And then, of course, Miss Masaki did mention mosquitoes at the very end,
Yes.
I think, last week. And so we do want to make sure we touch on that today.
Yeah, definitely. We will do that. So, yeah, Josh is absolutely right. Congratulations to Lucas. He's been with us for 5 years. Great guy. He's our service manager, so he actually has responsibility for all of our technicians and carrying out the service in your homes and businesses, making sure that those guys are trained well, know what they're doing, know the difference between a cockroach and a mosquito, things like that. So congratulations to him. We got him some really nice gifts. He's into cycling these days, so got him some custom wheels and some accessories for his bike. I didn't realize how expensive professional cycling can be until I started looking for anniversary gifts for him. So Luce has done a great job. He also is the one that did the 80-mile bike race charity
Now,
fundraiser.
don't cut it short. It's 81.
Was it 81?
81. Don't cut in that
mile. I didn't realize
mile.
there was an extra mile. That last mile was probably the worst one, too.
Probably was.
So yeah, he did the 81 miles for the Miracle Hill charity fundraiser that we did just a month or so ago. So he did a really good job there, raised a few $1,000s actually for Miracle Hill, which is a great local charity that we have. They've been around since the 40s, I believe, isn't it, Josh? Do you remember?
It's a long time.
It's been a while. So they do a lot of really good work in our area, so I highly encourage you guys to check them out. So we will get to Babala Masaki's question about mosquitoes here in a minute. I love you, Babala. But I did want to just finish the question about what's better, liquid termite treatment or termite bait stations. So I nerded out probably a little too much last week. I apologize. My wife told me I nerded out too much, but I think that's kind of my job. I don't know. It comes down to the fact that they are both effective. They both work really well. They both work in different ways, though. And then even the liquid termiticide treatments have a few different chemistries that are possible there. But really what it comes down to is, number one, personal preference, because some people just have an aversion to a liquid termiticide treatment. They are fearful that we are, pumping harmful chemicals into the soil and that it's going to have some sort of adverse effect on the environment. I can tell you that, yes, it is a chemical, but there are many chemicals that we use every day. If we were wearing a pair of shoes, there's probably some sort of rubber or composite on that, which is actually technically a chemical. So chemicals, I won't get on my soapbox about that again. But when used properly, they're very safe, I would say, and very beneficial to us. Plus, the chemistry in a lot of these termiticides are specifically geared for insects, and they're really not going to have much of an effect on a vertebrate of any kind. So we are vertebrates. We have an internal skeletal structure rather than an exoskeleton like insects. So number one, it's personal preference. A lot of people just feel like the bait stations are more environmentally friendly, and they are. They're a good environmentally friendly choice. But keeping in mind, there's still a chemistry that is used in a bait station. So you are still putting chemicals in the ground. People don't think of it that way. But again, that chemical, if you want to use that terminology, is a chitin inhibitor, and we don't have chitin. So it's specific for insects, I'll say, and more specifically termites. So very, very safe to use. But secondly, after personal preference, it comes down to a matter of cost. What we find our pricing structure is that typically a liquid termiticide treatment is more expensive on the front end, and then a bait station system is typically more expensive on the back end to maintain. So I'm going to recommend to most people, if they're kind of on the fence, they don't know which one to choose, they don't know which one is better, then make it a financial decision, because both of them carry the same warranty, at least with our company. Most companies are going to give a similar warranty. We do offer damage warranties with those. If you're going to be in your house for 5 years is a safe mark. Sometimes, depending on the math, it may be a little more or a little less than that. But 5 years is generally a good rule of thumb. If you're going to be in that house 5 years or less, then the bait stations actually make a better financial decision for you. You'll spend less money on the bait stations. If you're going to be in that house for more than 5 years, then probably that liquid termiticide treatment begins to make a little more sense from a financial standpoint. So again, I probably spent more time than I needed to on that one, but I wanted to kind of break it down and say, hey, they both work really well, so it's going to boil down to personal choice, and then cost. How long are you going to be in the home? There are a couple of other things, you know, if there's a lot of drilling involved, things like that, that you might lean toward the bait stations rather than the liquid termiticide treatment. So hopefully that answers that question. Still have a few minutes left, and I want to talk about Barbara Masaki's comment on mosquitoes. Now that is all she said, is mosquitoes, exclamation point. So that can be really, really broad. We did talk a couple of weeks ago about are mosquitoes dangerous or something like that. Something, you know, do I need to be concerned about mosquitoes? And we spent a good bit of time talking about that. The short answer is yes. They can be, but we don't want to fearmonger our customers into, you know, calling us up and getting a bunch of new services, because, you know, we've been cohabitating with mosquitoes here in the United States for a couple hundred years now. However, in recent history, since the turn of the 20th century, a lot of really huge steps were taken in mitigating mosquito populations and getting things like malaria under control. So we have more or less eliminated malaria from the United States, and I don't want to be definitive on that because, again, there are some cases where that have been documented that we think there might be some homegrown malaria. Places like Florida, though, typically not really South Carolina, not to my knowledge. So somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But so they are dangerous. We have all the vectors in place for mosquito-borne illness. Mosquitoes are the most dangerous insect in the world, the most deadly insect in the world, the most deadly animal, in the world. They take more lives and cause more sickness and illness to humans worldwide every year than any other animal on the planet.
Even more than sharks.
Even more than sharks. Even more than squirrels. It's a true fact. Squirrels, man. I'll never forget Mr. Medley's house. Squirrel apocalypse.
That was rough. Squirrelnado almost.
Squirrelnado, yes. All right, so with Squirrelnado, that's going to be our next promo video. I'm telling you, Squirrelnado, it's coming. Okay, so going on with mosquitoes, what are we talking about? Are we talking about control maybe then for that? Because we all agree that mosquitoes can be a problem, mosquitoes can be an issue. So if we're talking about control methods, we're going to use the mosquito, the backpack blowers. So really what it is, I mean truly it's a steel backpack blower. And then there's a reservoir on that backpack blower that holds some insecticide that we can put in. And it's able to mystify into small particulates that pesticide that's in there. One, we want to be selective on what kind of pesticide we use. We want to read that label thoroughly, make sure that the pesticide we're using is an appropriate pesticide for that application method and or for that pest. Secondly, when we're talking about something like a backpack blower, think about those small particulates going out into the air. So we just talked about environmentally friendly stuff, right? So it's almost a contradiction if you're not careful about it, that all of a sudden we're blowing all this pesticide all over the yard, right? So we do want to be careful where and how we're applying that. We don't want to get near bodies of water with that. We want to stay way away from that. But something else that we want to avoid are flowering plants. Why is that? Josh, do you have any idea why we might want to avoid flowering plants?
Because the bees.
The bees. Very good. Hey, see,
we love bees.
Josh didn't even know I was going to include him in this. We do love bees. We want to be careful about our pollinators. So we don't want to just soak down a bunch of flowering plants that we know, honeybees specifically, but there are tons of pollinators. Wow, guys. So carpenter bees are a huge nuisance, but you guys need to know they're tremendous pollinators. They're great pollinators. There's a lot of other bees, bumblebees, and even wasps and hornets and things like that can be good pollinators. Butterflies and so on and so forth. So honeybees are kind of the star of the show. They get all of the attention because they've been in decline recently. It seems like they're stabilizing, though, now somewhat. The most recent research tells us. So that's good news. We still want to be responsible, though, with that pest management. So we want to avoid flowering trees and shrubs. But we are going to try to get that foliage, particularly the underside of the foliage if we can, the underside of decks and other structures that might be good resting sites for these mosquitoes during the daytime when it's really hot outside. They've got to land, they've got to hang out somewhere. And so wherever they're landing, wherever they're hanging out, we want them to be able to come in contact with that pesticide. And of course, they die and they can't come and get you. Now, with mosquito control, I'm coming down to just a couple minutes left. With mosquito control too, it's important to recognize the fact that the smaller the area that we're treating, the more limited the effect is going to be on mosquitoes. So in other words, if I'm treating a house that maybe only has just that little tiny postage stamp yard, they built a house on a quarter of an acre, or in downtown Greenville, I've seen some houses that are on these tiny, they can't be more than an eighth of an acre. I mean, they're tiny little lots where you could literally reach out your window and touch your neighbor's hand if they're reaching out their window. They're that close together. So in those situations, if I treat that one little tiny piece of property, am I going to get good mosquito control? Probably not. It's going to be really limited. So the smaller the property, the more limited that control. The tighter the houses are grouped together, the more limited the control. But if we can get like an entire homeowners association involved where we're treating the entire neighborhood, well, that's a game changer. All of a sudden, we're going to get really, really good control. So even with really, really good control, a broad area like that, it's important to keep in mind mosquitoes can fly. Some species can fly up to like 3 miles looking for a meal, so it's not realistic to think that we're going to be able to kill every mosquito within a 3-mile radius of your home. It's just not realistic. So when we talk about mosquito control, we talk about the foggers. I'm sorry, I'm using fog as a loose term, so again, I don't want any of you technical geeks to jump on that. But we use those foggers, we use a power spray rig, we use different application methods to treat the trees, the shrubs, the other structural members. To do that, we can't guarantee that every single mosquito that you ever could possibly see would die. What we do say is it should significantly reduce those numbers. And if it doesn't, we'll come back, we'll treat that for free. So as a homeowner, I'm going to be very hard pressed to make some great recommendations on mosquito control. There are some, do-it-yourself home installation, different bug zappers and stuff like that that are available. I don't have any personal experience with those, so maybe some of them work well, maybe they don't. My only recommendation with stuff like that is if you're buying bug zappers or you're buying these mosquito misters that are on timers and so on and so forth, be cognizant of where you place them. Sometimes it's actually better if you don't place them right next to your patio or your back porch, wherever you're hanging out in the evening. Sometimes it's actually better if you're placing those way out and on the perimeters of the yard, because if it's an attractant, you want to attract those mosquitoes away from the house and out to those outer areas of the yard, and it's actually going to be more effective that way than if you have that bug zapper sitting right over your Friday night dinner, falling bug parts into your potato salad. So keep that in mind too. Placement is going to be very, very key. So I know I just sort of did a shotgun effect and touched on a few different things with mosquitoes. So if you have more questions about mosquitoes or some other pest, some other insect, obviously, shoot us another question. The more specific you are in your question, the better I can answer it. Guys, I think that's about all the time we have for this week. So we will see you next Wednesday at 2 o'clock. I am here next Wednesday, right? Yeah, I think so.
Are you going to Florida?
I am, but I will be back on Wednesday.
Okay.
I will be back on Wednesday. So yes. Other than that, guys, until next week, we love you. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for using us. Have a great July 24th.